Hey y'all, Dude79 here, and today we are reviewing Somerville, which will be available on Tuesday, November 15th on Steam, Epic Games, and available on Game Pass for Xbox Series X, S, and Xbox One. Let's jump into the review. Somerville is developed by Jumpship Games, an indie studio based in Guildford, UK. It's headed by Chris Olsen and Dino Patti, the ex-CEO and co-founder of Playdead, they of Limbo and Inside fame. Somerville is a sci-fi adventure game that focuses on an apocalyptic alien invasion of Earth, and a man and his family are forced to leave their house to try to escape, but ultimately they get separated, and you play as the father as he's trying to reconvene with his family. Right away, there are a lot of similarities between this and Limbo and Inside. The biggest difference being that this is a 3D action sci-fi adventure game, where Limbo and Inside were more like side-scrolling 2D platformers. I mean, they had all the puzzle elements, but it was mostly just side-scrolling 2D action. This opens things up considerably because the world is much bigger and there's more ways to explore, and it's not just a side-scroller. The cameras are sweeping. There's a lot of cinematic angles. It adds to the immersion of it, and you feel like you're more like playing a movie than you are playing a game, which I appreciate, because I feel like when you're able to really drive home that sense of dread of something like an alien invasion, it's much more effective in a 3D space. Not that it's not effective in a 2D space, but from like an immersive experience and to kind of really get the scale of everything, I feel like it works well in a 3D space. What I also like about this approach is that it allows Jumpship to inject some really intense like action sequences that complement the sensation of doom that you experience in the more isolated puzzle areas. Because when things really ramp it up, it's really exciting, and it's cool to have those moments to kind of remind you, like, look, there is an active alien invasion going on as you're solving these puzzles to try to find your family. Another strong suit in this game is the audio presentation. This game sounds amazing. Much like Limbo and Inside, there is no dialogue in this game, which I can always appreciate because they really allow the world and the events around you kind of explain things, but it also leaves things open for interpretation, which I think really gives these games some replay value, because you want to go back in and play through it and see what little things you missed. Maybe there were hints around the world that kind of give you a little bit more lore to build on to form that final conclusion. And I feel like that drives a lot of great conversations, which is, a lot better than your straightforward video games. This game really starts off, like, I don't want to say slow, but it's kind of a slow burn early on as you're making your way through the countryside and through the woods and through these small towns as the father trying to find your family. But along the way, you pick up some abilities, we'll just call it that, no spoilers. The second act, though, is where it really picks up, because this is where you begin to engage with the alien life forms that have invaded the planet. And there's just a lot more going on in terms of action in that second act, which really kind of I felt was necessary after the first act, because you really want to drive home the point that this is a very dire situation and you're going up against a very formidable foe. And we get a lot of sequences here that really drive that point home. And again, I feel like it complements the puzzle elements, because the puzzle are a little bit quieter, a little bit more isolated, and I really feel like it's good to have that balance to keep you kind of on the edge of your seat. The final act, however, is where Somerville goes full-on sci-fi. And with that, this is where the game becomes open to interpretation. This game goes like 2001 A Space Odyssey deep in terms of like what is really going on and what the intent of the aliens is, and it's mind-bending stuff. Like, it goes deep, and I think there is a lot of room for interpretation. I think there is a lot of room for discussion. I just feel like they really push everything to an 11 in terms of like the visuals and the audio, and it goes crazy sci-fi. But much like Inside, the end of this game will have you thinking long after the credits have rolled. Now, we've talked a lot about the action, and we've talked a lot about the presentation, but obviously the puzzles in these games are always supposed to be like a major highlight. They vary in difficulty, but nothing is ever too easy or too difficult, even though there were a couple there I completed that I was like, I don't know how I even solved these, but I'll take it. That's a win. If there's any gripe that I have with Somerville, I would have to say it's probably because of the switch to the 3D layout. some of the movement can be a little bit janky, and when the camera pulls back for that cinematic touch, it can be a little difficult to see where you're at and what you're walking into, and sometimes if you bump into certain items in the environment, you won't be able to move, which can kind of be a pain in the butt when you're in one of the action sequences and you're trying to escape. It's just a little bit janky. It's not as tightly controlled as I would have liked. I'm just going to attribute that to the transition to a 3D layout as opposed to 2D. I did run into a couple of bugs throughout the game, one of which my character was stuck running in place and I couldn't get him to move anywhere else, so I had to quit back to a previous checkpoint. But thankfully the checkpoints are very forgiving and I didn't have to go back very far. I mean, it was like actually right in that area. I had an audio issue here or there, and maybe these are things that they can address with any subsequent updates after launch. But for the most part, these were very minor gripes that had no like major impact on my overall enjoyment of this game. Somerville is, I feel like, the next evolution in this genre of game that Limbo and Inside had already set high goals. This is like that natural evolution to the 3D space, kind of getting on a bigger scale. And I do feel like Jumpship has done a great job at making that transition and still telling a compelling story with interesting characters and just beautiful presentation and eerie presentation. Excellent audio work, some very challenging puzzles, some nice action sequences, and an ending that's going to be that's left open for interpretation that I feel like gamers are going to really embrace, and I think it's going to drive a lot of great discussions. Again, this is going to be available on Steam and Epic Games, but it's also going to be dropping on Game Pass on Xbox Series X and S as well as Xbox One. Highly recommend checking this game out, especially if you have Game Pass. This is a no-brainer. If you really enjoyed games like Limbo and Inside, this is right in your wheelhouse. This is something that you're definitely going to want to play, have a good time with, soak it all in, and think about it and talk to your friends about it, because it is a very mind-bending type of game. Especially that final act is like wild ending stuff. So I think you guys and girls will really dig it if you check it out. Big shout out to Plan of Attack Biz for providing us with a code to check out the game on Xbox. And I really appreciate those of you that tuned in to check out this review. Let us know in the comments if you plan on picking up Somerville, or if you're playing it now, if you've watched this review after launch and you're playing it now, let us know your thoughts. Sound off in the comments, kind of keep it spoiler free, or hit me up on Twitter if you've got an idea or if you've got a theory about what that ending meant, because dude, it is nuts. Like, it is pretty crazy. So we would love to get your thoughts on that. Don't forget, Wednesday nights 9 p.m. on Twitch, Banter and Babble is live. Every week, we talk about movies, video games, TV shows, wrestling, beer, fast food, or just food in general. And it's always a good time. We would love to see you there. 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. If you can't catch us live, those videos will be right over here on YouTube. You can also check out the audio version on Spotify and iTunes. I'm the Dude 79. Thank you so much for watching this review. Take care, everybody.